Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Anything. Sai asked for what felt like the 100th time. Sasuke let his Sharingan fade, the crimson glow receding from his eye. Across the room, Haruhi sagged in his restraints and slumped forward, unconscious from sheer exhaustion. Nothing, Sasuke muttered, his voice tight with frustration. It's like the bastard has a will of steel. Sai tilted his head slightly, studying their prisoner. I have to hand it to him, he handles torture surprisingly well. Too well, Sasuke growled. He's not cracking, not even flinching. There was a beat of silence before Sai suggested, almost casually, perhaps we should have Sakura interrogate him. No. Sasuke's response was immediate and sharp. A frown creased his brow. That's exactly what he wants. Sai raised an eyebrow. But if she can get him to talk, isn't that the goal? Sasuke didn't answer right away. His gaze hardened as it landed on the unconscious redhead. He knew Sai wasn't wrong. If anyone could get Haruhi to open up, it would be Sakura. She had a way of getting people to lower their guard, of reaching places brute force never could. Plus, the villain was supposedly in love with her. But that kind of gentleness, that kind of closeness, that kind of interaction. No. Sasuke clenched his jaw. That was a dangerous game. He'd seen the way Haruhi looked at her. The way his eyes softened just slightly whenever he saw Sakura. Sasuke knew that look, and it ignited something primal in him. Jealousy burned low in his chest, coiling tighter with each breath. Sakura didn't belong near Haruhi. Not like that. Not ever again. I'm going to get some shut-eye, Sasuke said, voice clipped. He turned on his heel without waiting for a response. See if you can get anything out of him when he wakes. Sai watched him go. Once the door shut behind Sasuke, he turned back to Haruhi's limp body and tilted his head thoughtfully. Well, he murmured, almost to himself, you certainly know how to make things interesting. I'm so sorry, Jugo said again, his voice low with guilt as Sakura adjusted the dosage of his medication, carefully measuring the liquid into a vial. It's not your fault, Sakura replied gently, not looking up from her work. Haruhi tampered with your meds. Then he used that control over you, just like he did with me. You didn't choose any of it. Jugo's shoulders tensed. But I should have been able to break free sooner. You did. Sakura finally looked up, meeting his eyes. I forced the drugs out of my system with chakra manipulation. And I had Sasuke-kun there, he helped anchor me. You didn't have anyone, Jugo. That makes all the difference. He shifted uneasily in his chair, his broad frame seeming smaller under the weight of his regret. Still, it doesn't excuse what I did. What I could have done. A new voice cut through the room. Jugo. Both he and Sakura turned to see Sasuke leaning in the doorway, his expression unreadable but firm. Stop beating yourself up over something that was out of your control. Sakura's brows drew together in concern. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke stepped into the lab, his gaze sweeping over the room. He paused briefly at the sight of Hinata, still unconscious on the hospital bed. Naruto slumped beside her in an uncomfortable-looking metal chair, deep asleep. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, softer. No one blames you. Not me. Not Naruto. Not even Hinata. Jugo let out a long breath, the tension in his body easing just a little. But his eyes still lingered on Hinata, pained. But I hurt her. If you really want to make amends, Sakura interrupted softly, maybe, bring her some flowers. It won't fix what happened to her eyes, but once she can see again. She smiled. I think she'd appreciate having something beautiful waiting for her. Jugo's jaw tightened, and he gave a single, sharp nod. I will. Sakura offered him a small, understanding smile before lifting the vial she'd just finished preparing. The liquid shimmered faintly in the light. This should help stabilize your mood and balance your chakra levels. It'll smooth things out for you internally. Jugo eyed the concoction suspiciously. No mind control. Sakura laughed, the sound soft but sincere. No mind control. I promise. After a beat, Jugo took the vial and downed it in one gulp. He grimaced at the taste, but said nothing. Good, Sakura said. Get some rest after this, and maybe think about what flowers Hinata might like. Speaking of rest, Sasuke said, his voice low as he approached Sakura and gently took her hand. It's time for the doctor to get some sleep. Sakura blinked up at him in surprise as he tugged her out of the lab with quiet insistence. Behind them, Jugo flushed and ducked his head, a faint, amused smile tugging at his lips. Those two, he thought warmly. They really are something. Sasuke-kun, Sakura stammered as he guided her briskly down the hallway, her sandals squeaking faintly against the sterile floor. Wait a second. But Sasuke didn't stop. He didn't glance back or slow his pace. His grip remained firm, his steps resolute, as though letting go of her, even for a second, was not an option he was willing to consider. Sakura blushed furiously, glancing down at their joined hands, then up at the steady line of his back. What's gotten into you? They reached the end of the corridor, where Sasuke paused in front of a quiet room. He let go of her hand just long enough to push the door open, then immediately took hold of her again, pulling her inside before shutting the door firmly behind them. Sakura's eyes flicked around the small, dimly lit space. A single bed, a chair, a shelf of medical supplies. Then her gaze settled back on Sasuke's back, his shoulders rigid. He still hadn't turned to face her. What's gotten into me? He repeated softly, reaching for the lock with a slow, deliberate hand. The soft click echoed in the quiet. I almost lost you today. Sakura's breath caught in her throat. I swore, Sasuke said, his voice low and trembling with a rare vulnerability, I swore I would never lose anyone again. Not after everything. I promised myself I'd protect you. Naruto. Everyone I care about. I promised I'd protect Konoha. That I'd do better. He finally turned to face her. His eyes, usually unreadable, were wide open now, raw and unguarded. And today, he whispered. Today, I nearly broke that promise. I almost lost you. Sakura stared at him, heart pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. In his eyes, she saw everything he wasn't saying, fear, guilt, longing. And something else, deeper still. Love. Sasuke-kun, Sakura breathed, her voice barely above a whisper, trembling with emotion. Sakura, he said softly. Reverently. His eyes stayed locked on hers, unwavering, intense. I love you. For a moment, she could only stare at him, heart pounding, lips parted, words caught in her throat. But then he was there. In a blur of movement, Sasuke closed the space between them. His hand cradled her face as he pressed his lips to hers, hungry, unrestrained, full of everything he had held back for so long. The kiss was fierce, almost desperate, and Sakura melted into it, gripping the fabric of his shirt as if afraid he might disappear. She wanted more. More of his kiss. More of his warmth. More of him. Sasuke-kun, she whispered breathlessly as he pulled back just enough to look at her, his hand now at her waist, anchoring her to him. I love you. I've always loved you. A smile, small, but unmistakably real, curved at the corners of his lips. He kissed her again, softer this time, more deliberate, then scooped her up effortlessly. Sakura gasped, her arms wrapping around his neck as he carried her across the room to the small bed. He set her down gently, as if she were something fragile, something precious to him. Then he paused, standing over her, his dark hair falling into his eyes. The heat in his gaze made her breath hitch. But it wasn't just desire she saw in him. It was awesome wonder. A quiet, aching devotion. Sakura looked up at him, her eyes shining, full of the same love she'd held for him since she was a girl, unchanged, undimmed, but now returned in full. And Sasuke, for once, let himself feel it all. He tugged off his shirt, letting it fall to the ground, before reaching for Sakura's shirt. He paused as his fingers curled around the fabric, his eyes asking silently for permission. Sakura just looked up at him, kissed him once more, put her hands over his, and guided him. Her shirt fell to the floor with his. She slowly tugged off her pants, her eyes never leaving his as she leaned back onto the bed. She blushed under his gaze but reached for him with one hand. An invitation. That was all he needed. All he wanted. Sasuke pulled himself on top of her, pressing his lips to hers as he worked to undo his pants and letting them fall to the floor in a heap. Never one for words, Sasuke couldn't help but admire how beautiful Sakura was. That pale creamy skin of hers, those jade eyes that sparkled in the dim light of the room, and that mouth. Damn, that mouth that said his name so seductively. Sasuke nipped her lower lip and pressed himself down onto her. Sasuke-kun, Sakura breathed as his hard length rubbed against her hot, slick entrance. Sakura, he growled as he let his fingers trail down her stomach. He slowly inserted one finger, then another. Sakura gasped as he stroked, letting his fingers feel her wetness and rub against her clit. She moaned into his mouth. The pleasure came in waves as he slid his fingers in and out of her. His touch, his caress, his kiss, it was all too much for her. Even in her fantasies, nothing compared to this. Nothing compared to reality. Nothing compared to him. Her first orgasm came with an explosion of heat in her core. She couldn't help but groan and arch her back as the ecstasy rocked her. Sasuke smirked, watching her writhe beneath him. He slid his fingers out, and she hissed, wanting more. And she would get more. Sasuke would make sure of that. He gripped his cock, stroking it once, twice, before placing the tip at her entrance. Sakura, her gaze hazy and looking up at Sasuke with half-lidded eyes, reached for him, pulling him close as he pushed inside of her. Sasuke hissed as Sakura's walls clenched around him. Relax, Sakura. Breathe. Sakura obeyed, trying to calm her heart as he inserted himself into her thick folds. He fit her like a glove. Like he was made for her, and she was made for him. Sasuke placed a tender kiss on her lips before he moved. He slid into her over and over again, loving every second he was inside of her. He knew he would never get enough of this. Never get enough of her. Not after this. Sasuke-kun, Sakura moaned, her hips meeting his thrust for thrust. Sakura. Sasuke hissed again. Sasuke wanted her to feel it all. He wanted her to understand that he was always hers. He was always going to be hers. And there would be no one else. There would never be anyone else. Only her. And only him. For the rest of their days. Sakura looked up at him, tears trembling in the corners of her eyes. Sasuke leaned down to kiss them even as he shoved himself deep inside. It was like their worlds were colliding. Like they were combining into one. And with a low voice, Sasuke murmured, "Are you ready?" "I'm ready," Sakura panted. "Then come for me, Sakura." And she did. This orgasm was more intense than the last one. His cock still thrusted in and out of her as she came. And, feeling her walls close in around him, Sasuke couldn't stop his own wave of ecstasy. He stayed inside of her, letting her milk him for all he was worth. Every last drop belonged to her. He belonged to her. "I love you, Sakura," Sasuke said as he came down from his orgasm. "I love you, Sasuke-kun," Sakura breathed. And he collapsed next to her, cupping her cheek and staring at her until they both finally fell asleep. Sakura awoke with a sensation of pure bliss. Her body ached. Deep, delicious soreness that reminded her of last night, but nestled against Sasuke, every ache and pain seemed to melt away in an instant. His steady breathing tickled the top of her head, and his arm draped possessively over her waist kept her firmly anchored in the present. The room was still cloaked in darkness, the only indication of time being the soft, rhythmic ticking of the clock on the wall. Sakura knew she needed to get up soon. Hinata and Naruto would be waiting patiently, eager for Sakura's help in restoring what had been stolen from Hinata. Her sight, cruelly taken by Haruhi. A ripple of frustration crossed Sakura's face at the thought of the insane medic Nin. Just the memory of Haruhi's lustful gaze made her jaw tense. What's wrong? Sasuke's voice was low and husky, still thick with sleep. The unexpected sound made Sakura glance up, her heart skipping a beat. You're awake, she whispered, surprised. He gave a slight nod, lips curving into a knowing smirk. Ah. His dark eyes softened as they traced the curve of her flushed cheeks. Sleep well. Sakura's face burned, and she couldn't help the shy smile tugging at her lips. Very well. At the sight of her blush, Sasuke's own cheeks reddened. Just a touch. Embarrassed by the sudden vulnerability, he turned his face away, muttering a gruff, good. Sakura couldn't help but giggle softly, pressing a light kiss to his bare shoulder. We should get up. I need to start prepping. Sasuke frowned. Are you sure you're up to it? A lot happened yesterday. I'm okay, Sakura said. Sasuke didn't look convinced. Sakura shook her head and kissed his shoulder again. I'm okay, Sakura said again. Sasuke still did not look convinced. Do you want me to prove it? Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Prove it. Without a word, Sakura moved to position herself over him. Sasuke's gaze flickered from her face down to her breast, and his jaw tightened with desire. Sakura bit her lower lip, averted her gaze, and then glanced back at him with a shy smile on her face. Yeah, I'll prove it to you. Heat flared in Sasuke's gaze as he watched her, carefully, wrap her hand around his cock. Stroking him gently at first, Sakura lowered her lips to the tip of his hardened cock. Sasuke hissed, his hand gripping the sheets as she worked. What she did to him should have been illegal. Hell, he'd already been an outlaw once. Sakura, Sasuke groaned. She opened her mouth, letting his tip slide into her mouth before slowly letting his full length inside. Sasuke growled. He wanted to take her all over again, but she pressed a hand on his torso and gave him a look that said, "Let me do this for you." Sasuke wasn't about to fight her over it. Sakura flicked her tongue along the base of his cock. It was torture, watching her, feeling her, and yet unable to thrust himself inside of her. Sasuke wanted her. He wanted all of her. But at that moment, he had to settle for her mouth. Her beautiful, seductive mouth. Those soft pink lips that sucked his cock. And then she released his cock with a soft pop. Before Sasuke could protest, she gripped his length and lowered her tongue to his balls. She stroked him, using her saliva as a lubricant, while she sucked one of his balls into her mouth. She flicked her tongue over it, and he couldn't stop himself. Sasuke grabbed her head, fingers trembling as they clenched her cherry blossom hair. Sakura. Sakura released his ball and placed her mouth on his cock once more. She had a look in her eye. The same look she got whenever there was a particular problem she wanted to solve. A determination to accomplish her goal. And Sasuke knew that she wanted him to come inside of her mouth. Sasuke narrowed his gaze slightly as she swallowed his cock whole, her tongue flicking along his balls before coming back up to suck the tip once more. And then again. And again. Until all Sasuke saw, all Sasuke felt, was Sakura. Gaze hazy and lids half lowered, Sasuke felt the wave of an orgasm roll over him. It surged through him, pushing out and out until his thick seed was completely inside of Sakura's mouth. And like the vixen she was, she swallowed it all. Sasuke was left breathless and panting, his cock still in Sakura's mouth until she was satisfied he was done orgasming. Then she released him, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and smiled at him. Damn, that smile. It was everything to him. Sasuke-kun, Sakura said happily. Is that proof enough that I'm fine? Sasuke let out a dark laugh. If you didn't have to stay focused for the next couple of days, I wouldn't let you leave this room, Sakura. We have the rest of our lives for that, Sakura said with a smile. Don't be greedy. Sasuke smirked. Ah. Sakura curled up next to him, placing a tender kiss on his cheek. I love you. I love you, too. Hinata, Sakura said gently, her voice calm and reassuring as she adjusted her gloves. Hinata lay on the operating table in Orochimaru's old lab, the sterile smell of the room mingling with the faint scent of dust. Dim light flickered from a cracked bulb overhead, casting eerie shadows along the cracked stone walls. Sakura approached the bedside, placing a comforting hand on Hinata's shoulder. I'm going to be working on delicate tissue with your eyes, so I'll need to put you under. This should only take a few hours, but the treatment needs to be repeated regularly over the next few days to be effective. Hinata swallowed, her lower lip quivering, but she nodded, determination hardening her usually gentle expression. Naruto knelt beside her, his hand gripping hers tightly. I can do it, Hinata whispered, squeezing Naruto's hand for courage. As long as I'm in your hands, Sakura-chan, I think I'll be all right. Sakura offered a reassuring smile and patted her on the shoulder, but her eyes flickered with worry. Her gaze shifted to Naruto, who was trying, and failing, to hide his anxiety. He forced a smile, blue eyes brimming with forced optimism. Sakura-chan's the best, he said, his tone a mix of confidence and pleading reassurance. She'll take good care of you, Hinata. You can trust her. Standing in the doorway, Sasuke watched the scene unfold with a frown on his face. He knew Sakura could handle it, he trusted her abilities without a shadow of a doubt. But what worried him was the toll this procedure would take on her. Working on something as intricate as the optic nerves would drain her chakra completely, leaving her vulnerable to one of her infamous fainting spells. He and Naruto needed to be vigilant, keeping a watchful eye on the hideout. And maybe, just maybe, they could put their pent-up frustration to good use by dealing with Haruhi. Sai had been up all night trying to pry answers from the stubborn medic Nin, but nothing had worked. He had remained infuriatingly silent, his only request being to see Sakura. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, and his grip on the doorframe tightened, knuckles turning white. The idea of Haruhi laying eyes on Sakura again made his blood boil. As if he'd ever let that happen. Naruto seemed to sense Sasuke's simmering anger and glanced back at him. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. Once Sakura was finished with the procedure, they would take turns keeping watch over her. And in the meantime, they'd make sure Haruhi understood that if he ever thought of Sakura again, he'd regret it. Taking a deep breath, Sasuke forced himself to relax, reminding himself that the most important thing right now was keeping Sakura and Hinata safe. Sakura pressed a gentle kiss to Hinata's forehead, whispering softly, "I'll take care of you." She drew a deep breath, channeling her chakra as the familiar green glow ignited around her hands. "Okay," she murmured. "Let's begin. You've tried the Mangekyo Sharingan and Sai's creative torture tactics," Haruhi drawled, reclining against the cold stone wall of his cell. His eyes, dark and unyielding, flickered with a hint of amusement as he looked at Sasuke, who stood on the opposite side of the room. "What's next? I've already told you, I won't talk unless I see Sakura-sama." Sasuke leaned back against the wall, his eyes half-lidded with cold indifference. "She's busy." A slow, twisted smile stretched across Haruhi's face. "Busy," he echoed, feigning curiosity. Then his gaze sharpened, a predatory gleam lighting his expression. "Ah, must be healing Hinata's eyes. Of course. Seeing her operate, that raw talent, that determination." Sasuke's jaw clenched, but he remained silent, his dark eyes fixed on Haruhi with unflinching calm. Haruhi's voice dropped to a low, breathless murmur, his eyes glinting with vile satisfaction. "It makes me want to take her all over again." In an instant, Sasuke was across the room, his hand fisted and poised mere centimeters from Haruhi's nose, the force of his movement stirring the air. But something stopped him, an arm, braced firmly against his chest. "Oi, oi," Naruto's voice came from behind, calm but firm. "I thought you were keeping watch over the operation," Sasuke muttered without looking back, his tone laced with irritation. Naruto didn't budge, his arm remaining firmly in place. Jugo's got it covered, he said. Sasuke didn't respond, but his shoulders stiffened. He knew why Jugo had insisted on staying close to Sakura and Hinata. Guilt weighed heavily on the man's conscience, even though no one truly blamed him. Haruhi's mind control jutsu had forced Jugo to act against his will, leading to both Sakura and Hinata's capture. No one held him accountable, except Jugo himself. Still, Sasuke couldn't help but feel uneasy leaving the women in Jugo's care. Not because he doubted his loyalty, Jugo would sooner die than fail them again, but because it was hard to shake the memory of how easily Haruhi had exploited his comrade's fragmented mind. Haruhi let out a soft, mocking chuckle. You're so predictable, Uchiha. Always so quick to violence. But it's no use. I only want to see Sakura-sama. You can break every bone in my body, it won't change a thing. Naruto's hand moved from Sasuke's chest to his shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. He's not worth it, Naruto muttered. We need him to talk. Can't risk knocking him unconscious just yet. Sasuke's eyes never left Haruhi, his gaze icy and murderous. If you think I'm just going to sit here while you talk about her like that. Haruhi merely smirked, unafraid. Oh, then go ahead. Lose your temper. Show me just how much I got under your skin. You're protecting her, but it's pointless. Eventually, she'll come to me. She'll have no choice. Naruto tightened his grip on Sasuke's shoulder, forcing him to take a step back. Bastard just likes the sound of his own voice, he muttered. Come on, Sasuke. Let's regroup. We'll figure out a new strategy. Reluctantly, Sasuke allowed Naruto to steer him away, his fingers twitching with the need to wring Haruhi's neck. As they walked down the dim corridor, Naruto shot him a sidelong glance. I get it. You're pissed. But we've gotta be smart about this. If Sakura finds out you lost your cool and did something reckless, she'll tan both our hides. Sasuke huffed, his shoulders finally relaxing. That's not why I stopped. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Oh. Sasuke's lips curved into a smirk. If I killed him too soon, he wouldn't suffer nearly enough. Naruto snorted. Fair point. Let me try. Sasuke sighed, already knowing where this was going. You're going to talk to him, aren't you? Naruto grinned sheepishly, rubbing the back of his neck. You know me too well. A resigned smirk tugged at Sasuke's lips as he walked to the back wall, raising his hand in a half-hearted gesture of surrender. Have at it. Naruto gave him a quick nod before stepping closer. Why do you want to see Sakura-chan so badly? At the sound of her name, Haruhi's lips parted, his breath hitching as if just hearing it was enough to send a shiver through him. Sakura-sama, he murmured reverently, his eyes flickering with a twisted kind of devotion. She's everything I want in a woman. Strong. Sensitive. Beautiful. Sasuke's eyes twitched. Naruto didn't bother looking back at his fuming friend, choosing instead to keep his focus on Haruhi. I get it. Sakura-chan's amazing. But why her? You fell for her back at the Chunin exams, right? A wistful smile curved Haruhi's lips. Of course, he breathed, eyes lighting up with a distant, almost dreamy expression. How could I not? Not when she so fiercely defended you and the Uchiha bastard. Even when she knew she was outmatched, she didn't back down. She was a sight to see. That anger. That rage. That will to survive. It was beautiful. She was beautiful. I fell in love with her right then and there. He turned his head, locking eyes with Sasuke for a moment, a glimmer of scorn in his gaze. Not that you appreciated her back then. Sasuke remained silent, his face an unreadable mask. But the faintest flicker of regret crossed his eyes, gone before anyone could catch it. Naruto ignored the tension between the two and pressed on. So you've been obsessed with her ever since? Haruhi huffed, his lips curling into a sneer. You wouldn't understand. None of you would. She's special. Different from the rest of you. Pure-hearted and strong. A force of nature. It was destiny when we met. I knew it then, and I know it now. Naruto tilted his head, his tone still deceptively casual. Yeah, but she doesn't even remember you, does she? Not from back then. You were just another genin in the crowd. So why now? Why go through all this trouble? Haruhi's eyes grew cold, his fingers twitching against the chains. Because she's forgotten who she truly is. That fire, the one that burned so brightly back then, it's been smothered by the likes of you and the Uchiha. I need to reignite it. Bring her back to herself. Back to me. Naruto let out a low whistle. Wow, you really think you're the one to bring her back, huh? You think knocking her out and kidnapping her was the way to prove that? That controlling her was going to do the trick? Haruhi smirked, unrepentant. Sometimes, the only way to wake someone up is to show them how powerless they've become. To make them fight for themselves again. That's what I was trying to do, force her to remember what it feels like to be strong. Unrestrained. Naruto's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. You don't get to decide that for her. Sakura-chan's never stopped being strong. You just didn't like that her strength wasn't directed at you. A hint of frustration flashed across Haruhi's face, but he said nothing. Sasuke finally spoke, his voice low and lethal. You think you know her. You don't. All you see is what you want her to be. But Sakura doesn't need you, or anyone else, forcing her to prove herself. She's already stronger than you'll ever be. Haruhi looked away, his jaw clenched, but his expression remained defiant. Naruto glanced over his shoulder, giving Sasuke a nod. I'll keep talking to him. Go check on Sakura-chan and Hinata. Sasuke hesitated for a moment, but ultimately pushed away from the wall, his eyes narrowing at Haruhi one last time. He's all yours. As Sasuke walked out, Naruto turned back to Haruhi, forcing a casual smile. You really screwed up, you know. Sakura-chan's not the kind of person who forgives easily when it comes to hurting her friends. Haruhi scoffed. I don't need her forgiveness. I just need her to see the truth. Naruto leaned forward, his expression turning serious. Maybe the truth is that you never really understood her at all. Nothing. Sai asked as Naruto stepped out of the interrogation room. Naruto shook his head, letting out a frustrated sigh. Behind the door, Haruhi's mocking laughter echoed through the corridor. The guy refuses to talk unless he sees Sakura-chan, Naruto muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. Sai frowned, his brow knitting together. Do you think? Naruto scratched his cheek, deep in thought. Maybe we should let him. Just once. Maybe it'll crack him open. No. Sasuke's voice cut through the hall like a blade, low and unwavering. Both Naruto and Sai turned, spotting him leaning against the wall, shrouded in shadows. His eyes narrowed. But, Sasuke, Sai said slowly, it might be the only way to get him to open up. I said no. Naruto frowned, stepping forward. Look, I want to protect Sakura-chan as much as you do. But Haruhi's locked up. He's not going anywhere, and he can't hurt her from a cell. Maybe seeing her will make him talk. Sasuke shot Naruto with a glare so cold it could freeze fire. You're not thinking straight. He doesn't just want to see her. He wants to get in her head. That's why he hasn't cracked under torture. He's holding out for her. Sai remained quiet, considering Sasuke's words. Then, his dark eyes flicked between his teammates. Shouldn't we let Sakura decide for herself? Sasuke's jaw clenched, the muscle in his cheek twitching. She'll do it as soon as she finds out. That's who she is, a kunoichi to her core. Always putting the mission first, no matter the risk. He looked away, his expression softening just a fraction. But she shouldn't have to. Not this time. Naruto's gaze dropped, understanding the unspoken fear buried beneath Sasuke's rigid exterior. Sai, Naruto said quietly, his tone gentler now. Give us a minute. Sai hesitated, glancing between the two, but eventually gave a small nod. Fine. I'll check if the Hokage sent any updates this morning. With that, Sai disappeared down the hall, his footsteps barely making a sound. Once they were alone, Naruto leaned against the wall next to Sasuke, crossing his arms. You're worried she'll want to confront him, Naruto said plainly. Sasuke didn't respond immediately. Instead, he exhaled slowly, like he was trying to push the frustration out of his lungs. You know her. She'll want to do whatever it takes to get the information we need. Even if it means putting herself in danger. Naruto gave a small, knowing smile. She's stronger than that, you know. Sakura-chan's face was worse. Hell, she's fought right alongside us through the war. You gotta trust her strength. It's not about her strength, Sasuke said, his voice low but fierce. It's about that bastard trying to manipulate her. He's obsessed. He'll say anything to try and break her spirit. Naruto raised an eyebrow. And you don't think Sakura-chan can handle that? Sasuke's fists clenched. I know she can. That's the problem. She'll push through it, no matter how much it hurts her. I don't want her to go through that, not because of him. Naruto watched his friend carefully, understanding dawning on him. You're not just worried about her getting hurt, you're worried about her carrying that burden alone. You know she won't tell us if something he says gets under her skin. Sasuke didn't answer, but the silence was enough. Naruto sighed, pushing off the wall and resting a hand on Sasuke's shoulder. We'll figure it out, but in the end, it's her choice. We can't protect her from everything. All we can do is make sure we're there when she needs us. For a long moment, neither spoke, the tension simmering between them. Finally, Sasuke gave a curt nod. If she decides to face him, we'll make sure he doesn't get the satisfaction of thinking he's won. We stay close. One wrong move, and I'll end him. Naruto grinned. Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything less from you. In the blink of an eye, Sai appeared at Naruto and Sasuke's side, his usual calm expression in place. The Hokage wrote. He needs you two to track down Team Oboro. I'll hold down the fort with the rest of Team Taka and keep an eye on Haruhi. Naruto frowned, but nodded. Watch over them for us. Sasuke grimaced and glared at Sai. Don't say anything to Sakura about Haruhi wanting to meet with her. Not until we're back. Sai gave a fake smile. Of course. Sasuke narrowed his eyes and Naruto groaned. Sai, wipe that fake-ass smile off your damn face. You've never been good at it. The corner of Sai's mouth twitched upward. Is this better? Not even close, Sasuke deadpanned. Sakura's brow beaded with sweat as she worked on Hinata's eyes. Haruhi had done a real number on them, delicate tissue damage, disrupted chakra pathways, and scarring that twisted like dark tendrils across the irises. Sakura's hands remained steady, even as her chakra flowed with precise intensity, knitting the damaged tissue together one careful layer at a time. It had been hours since she started the operation, and she could feel the strain building within her. Even with her skill, the sheer concentration required to reverse the damage meant it would take several consecutive treatments over the next few days. And once this session was over, Hinata would have to keep her eyes blindfolded to give the healing process a chance to stabilize. Hang in there, Hinata, Sakura whispered, her tone soothing. This is going to take a while. You're doing great. Sakura spared a quick glance toward the doorway, where Karen and Jugo stood just outside. They were speaking quietly to each other, but their focus never wavered from keeping guard. Despite their casual posture, there was a tension in the air, like a coiled spring waiting to snap. A faint crease formed between Sakura's brows. Isn't this a bit much? Haruhi was locked away, with no chance of escape, not with Naruto and Sasuke around. She couldn't help but feel like the extra security was overkill. Forcing herself to refocus, Sakura channeled more chakra into Hinata's optic nerves. Her reserves were already starting to dip, a dull ache forming behind her temples. I'm definitely going to pass out after this, she thought grimly. Just as she moved to stabilize one of the critical points, the ground rumbled violently beneath her feet. Sakura gasped, her hands jerking slightly as she fought to maintain control over the precise chakra output. What the? She whispered, glancing over her shoulder. Karen's eyes widened. Jugo braced himself against the wall, his expression hardening. Before they could react further, Suigetsu came barreling down the hall, water splashing off his limbs as he skidded to a halt in front of them. His usual smirk was replaced by a grim set of his jaw. "We're under attack," Suigetsu shouted, his voice echoing through the corridor. "Explosives near the western wing. Haruhi's minions are making a move." Sakura's eyes widened in disbelief. How did they get this close without anyone noticing? Karen clenched her fists, her expression turning fierce. They must have found one of the old tunnels. "I'll look for intruders." Jugo nodded, his gaze flickering to Sakura. "We'll secure the area. Stay here and finish healing her." Sakura bit her lip, worrying gnawing at her. If they were bold enough to attack the base, they had to be after something, or someone. Haruhi, she realized with a sinking feeling. They're trying to get to him. She forced herself to focus back on Hinata's eyes, even as the building trembled again, dust raining down from the ceiling. Karen shot her a sharp look. "Just keep doing what you're doing. We'll handle this mess." Jugo gave a firm nod, already shifting into his curse mark form, muscles bulging with power. "We won't let them get through." "Where are Sasuke and Naruto?" Sakura asked harshly. "They had to leave," Suigetsu said. Sai mentioned the Hokage giving them a mission to hunt down Team Oboro. "And where is Sai?" Sakura asked. "Taking on the rogue ninja as we speak," Suigetsu answered. "I'll be guarding you from here on out while you finish up with Hinata." Sakura nodded, forcing herself to block out the sounds of the skirmish brewing outside. Her hands steadied as she channeled more healing chakra. She couldn't afford to lose focus now, Hinata needed her. And until Naruto and Sasuke got back, they had to hold the line. Sakura gritted her teeth as she focused the last reserves of her chakra into healing Hinata's damaged eyes. Sweat trickled down her forehead, but she didn't stop. One slip could mean permanent blindness. She had to trust that her comrades would hold the line, defending the base until every last one of Haruhi's rogue ninja army was dealt with. "Shanaru," Sakura muttered, barely above a whisper, forcing down her frustration. Out of the corner of her eye, she glimpsed movement through the glass pane of the door. Suigetsu was talking to someone. Sai. Relief fluttered in her chest, but it evaporated the instant she saw Sai's solemn expression. Anxiety prickled at the back of her neck as he knocked once before slipping inside. "What is it, Sai?" Sakura hissed. "We need to leave," Sai said bluntly. "There are too many of them. Jugo and Karen are sweeping the perimeter, but without Sasuke and Naruto." Sakura clenched her jaw, forcing herself to remain calm. "I'm almost done. If I stop now, Hinata's vision might be lost for good." "How much time do I have?" Sai's mouth tightened. 5 minutes. At most. "I can finish in 3, Sakura replied, determination hardening her tone. Sai gave a single nod before slipping back out, already speaking into his intercom. His voice was clipped as he relayed the change of plans to Karen, Suigetsu, and Jugo. Sakura let out a shaky breath, refocusing on the intricate chakra work. Of all times for Naruto and Sasuke to be sent out to hunt down Team Oboro. They could have used their firepower right now. Instead, she was stuck at the tail end of an operation, draining the last of her chakra to help Hinata. But dwelling on it wouldn't do any good. Sakura squared her shoulders and poured everything into completing the treatment, blocking out the distant sounds of combat and the gnawing worry. She would finish this. No matter what. Sasuke and Naruto flew through the dense forest, leaping from one branch to the next. The rhythm of their movements was familiar, silent, swift, and powerful. A breeze rustled the leaves, scattering light through the canopy above. "I've got some contacts in the underworld who might help us track down Team Oboro," Sasuke said, his tone matter of fact. "They might have some intel on their whereabouts." Naruto gave a short nod. "Guess all those years of wandering around the world are finally paying off." Sasuke shot him a sideways glance, eyes narrowing slightly. Did you think I just traveled to sightsee? Naruto scoffed, landing on a thicker branch before launching himself forward again. Please. I took on plenty of S-rank missions too, you know. Sai and I had a different mission every week. I barely saw Hinata at all during those years. His shoulders slumped just a bit. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. You barely see her now. Naruto bristled, shooting a glare over his shoulder. I see her more than you saw Sakura-chan in the last few years. At least I came home once in a while. Sasuke's jaw tightened. I came home, he muttered. Naruto barked out a laugh. The middle of the night to give your report to Kaka-sensei doesn't count. A flicker of annoyance flashed across Sasuke's face. Fine. I didn't see Sakura as much as I wanted. But I had things to do. Naruto's expression softened. She had stuff to do too. And at least she sent you letters. You barely wrote back to any of us. Sasuke kept his gaze fixed ahead, his voice dropping. I was busy. Yeah, busy brooding, Naruto teased, though his tone was less biting. He let out a low groan as his stomach gave a loud, disgruntled growl. He winced, clutching his abdomen. Oh oi, think we can stop for a sec? I really gotta take a dump. Sasuke's nose wrinkled in clear disgust. You're still the same, done. Naruto shot him a sheepish grin. Some things never change. Sasuke sighed, veering slightly to the left and landing on a broader branch where they could pause. Just be quick about it. Naruto's grin widened, eager to get this mission over with and see Sakura-chan. Sasuke glared at him. Shut it. We can't hold them any longer. Suigetsu snarled down the hall at Sai, his voice edged with frustration and urgency. Get them out. Now. Sai quickly glanced over his shoulder toward Sakura, who was meticulously finishing Hinata's eye surgery. Her face was pale, beads of sweat clinging to her brow, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Every ounce of her chakra had been drained, yet she pushed forward, determined to save her friend. Sai couldn't help but admire her resolve. I've got it, Jugo said quietly, stepping up beside Suigetsu. His eyes locked on the horde of enemy ninja pressing against their position, snarling and relentless. She needs 3 more minutes. I'll give them those 3 minutes. It's the least I can do after. Suigetsu's gaze hardened, but there was no accusation in his voice. No one blames you for that, Jugo. Jugo's eyes flickered toward the gnashing enemy at the walls, twisted, cursed ninja marked by the same dark sigil spreading across his own skin. His fists clenched tightly, knuckles whitening with the effort. I owe Sakura and Hinata every second I can buy, he said, voice low and resolute. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Jugo stepped forward, his body rippling with raw power as the curse marks flared fiercely across his skin. His eyes glowed with an unearthly light, a mix of pain and determination etched into every line of his face. Beside him, Suigetsu tightened his grip on the giant sword strapped to his back, a cocky grin playing on his lips despite the overwhelming odds. Bring it on, Suigetsu snarled, spinning the sword easily. The first wave crashed against them like a storm. Jugo roared, swinging his arms in wide arcs, summoning strength as his muscles bulged beyond mortal limits. With a brutal sweep, he sent a dozen cursed ninjas flying through the air, their bodies hitting the stone floor with sickening thuds. Suigetsu was a blur of motion, his sword flashing through the air, slicing through enemy after enemy with ruthless precision. Each strike was calculated, yet fierce, he moved like a predator. But the cursed ninja kept coming, endless and merciless. They clawed at Jugo, some managing to sink cursed daggers into his arms and legs. He gritted his teeth, his skin flaring brighter, pushing the curse's power to its limits. With a guttural roar, he surged forward, sending a shockwave rippling through the ground that threw enemies off balance. Suigetsu leapt atop a crumbling pillar, shouting, Jugo. We don't have much time. Jugo nodded, voice heavy with strain, 3 minutes. That's all we need. The two ninja fought back to back, an unbreakable wall of fury and strength. Jugo's cursed power crackled in waves, distorting the air, while Suigetsu's sword carved arcs of death through the relentless horde. Standing guard in front of the operating room, Sai whipped out his scroll, fingers moving swiftly over the ancient symbols inked on the parchment. With a sharp exhale, he slammed the scroll open, and in an instant, vibrant images burst to life. Massive dragons with scales shimmering like smoke erupted from the page, their fiery breaths scorching the air as they tore into the cursed ninja horde. Towering tigers with muscles rippling beneath striped fur leapt from the scroll, claws tearing through enemies as they growled with primal ferocity. The roar of beasts filled the battlefield, mingling with the clash of steel and battle cries. Sai's summoned creatures fought with relentless power, weaving through the chaos to bolster Jugo and Suigetsu's defense. With Sai's dragons circling overhead and tigers bounding alongside, the tide of battle began to shift. The cursed ninjas faltered, caught between the raw strength of Jugo and Suigetsu and the ferocious might of Sai's living art. Karen, watching it all, glanced over her shoulder into the operating room. She gritted her teeth. Hurry up, Sakura. Seriously? Sasuke asked incredulously. You have to go to the bathroom again. Naruto winced, raising his hands in a half-hearted apology. Sorry, but you know how it is. When you gotta go, you gotta go. Besides, Karen's cooking hasn't exactly been great for my stomach lately. You know I'd rather be eating ramen. Sasuke grimaced. You're an adult, idiot. Start acting like one. Naruto shot him a sharp glare. I'll only be a minute, alright? That's what you said last time, Sasuke sighed, shaking his head. And you took 20 minutes. What the hell is wrong with you? Sorry, really, sorry, Naruto mumbled, backing away toward the bushes. Sasuke exhaled deeply and glanced toward the treeline. It had been hours since they left Orochimaru's abandoned hideout, and he knew Sakura was likely knee-deep in Hinata's chakra-intensive surgery by now. He hated leaving her in such a vulnerable moment, especially when the procedure was so draining, but he trusted her strength. She would manage fine without him hovering. At this rate, Sasuke muttered under his breath, voice low and dark, Team Oboro is slipping through our fingers. Naruto disappeared behind the brush, and Sasuke's eyes narrowed in frustration. If only Kiba were here, the guy had the nose of a bloodhound. They'd never lose their target with him around. Out of the corner of his eye, Sasuke caught the sharp silhouette of a hawk gliding silently against the pale sky. Without hesitation, he raised his arm, steady and sure. The hawk circled once before descending gracefully, perching on his outstretched forearm. His gaze sharpened as he spotted the small note fastened to the bird's leg. A chill ran down his spine. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. We need to go, Sasuke snapped the moment Naruto emerged from behind the bushes, still adjusting his pants. I know, Naruto mumbled, sheepish but trying to sound confident. I'm good to go now. Let's hunt down Team Oboro. Not that, Sasuke interrupted, his tone cutting through Naruto's rambling. He thrust a small, crumpled note toward him, his expression grim. We need to go back to Orochimaru's old hideout. Now. Naruto blinked, confusion flashing across his face. Huh, why? What's going on? Without another word, Sasuke summoned Susanoo, its towering, spectral form shimmering into existence around him. The sheer power radiating from Sasuke made Naruto's stomach tighten. I'm not following. Naruto started, his voice uncertain. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the note. Hinata and Sakura are in trouble. There, Sakura panted, wiping sweat from her brow as a small, triumphant smile broke across her face. She glanced down at Hinata, who lay motionless on the operating table. Done. The relief was short-lived as angry shouts echoed through the hallway outside. Sakura turned, grimacing as the pounding footsteps grew louder. Karen, she called, her voice strained. I need you. The door burst open, and Karen rushed in, arm already outstretched, prepared for Sakura to bite down. But Sakura shook her head, and Karen froze, eyes widening in surprise. Let Hinata bite you, Sakura instructed, her voice firm despite the exhaustion she felt. She needs to recover, or we're all sitting ducks. Karen hesitated, glancing down at the unconscious Kunoichi. Are you sure? I'm sure, Sakura said breathlessly. Do it. Without a moment's delay, Karen positioned Hinata's mouth over her forearm and forced Hinata's teeth into her skin. Chakra pulsed, flowing from Karen to Hinata. Karen's knees wobbled as her energy drained, but she gritted her teeth and held on. Slowly, Hinata's eyelids fluttered open, her lavender eyes still clouded and unfocused. Sakura-chan, she whispered, voice weak but conscious. Sakura smiled down at her, relief flooding through her veins. We need to go, she urged, pulling Hinata off the operating table and supporting her weight. She grabbed Karen's hand, guiding both women toward the door. As they stumbled into the hallway, Sai appeared, his face tight with worry. He took one look at the three of them and frowned. We need to move. Now. What about Haruhi? Sakura asked, eyes darting to the sound of fighting echoing from the next room. Is he secure? Not for long, Sai admitted, jaw clenched. Our priority is escape. Sakura's gaze shifted to the corridor where Jugo and Suigetsu battled the horde of cursed ninjas, their attacks relentless. Did we get all the information we needed from him? She asked, eyes narrowing. Sai hesitated, the words catching in his throat. He remembered Sasuke's earlier warning, but this wasn't the time to be cautious. His gaze sharpened, and he looked straight into Sakura's eyes. He won't speak. Not to anyone, Sai said quietly. Not unless you talk to him. Sakura's brow furrowed, confusion lacing her features. Not even Sasuke-kun could get him to open up. No, Sai replied, a hint of frustration coloring his tone. Naruto couldn't either. He wants you, Sakura. You're the only one he'll talk to. For a moment, Sakura's shoulders sagged, the weight of responsibility settling in. She closed her eyes and took a deep, shaky breath, the noise of battle pressing in from all sides. Okay. Then, she whispered, steeling herself. Get everyone out now. She pushed Hinata and Karen toward Sai, catching him off guard. He barely had time to react, his arms instinctively wrapping around the weakened Kunoichi. Sakura? Sai asked, concern flashing in his eyes. Sakura gave him a smile. Sai's stomach dropped. It was a fake smile. See you soon, Sai. And with that, Sakura turned and ran down the hall. Sakura was running out of chakra. Completely drained and barely standing after healing Hinata, she knew continuing on was reckless, foolish, even. But she was a Kunoichi, and her determination ran deeper than her exhaustion. If she could get Haruhi to talk, even as the walls of Orochimaru's collapsing hideout trembled and cracked around her, then so be it. With a ragged breath, she forced her legs to move, dragging herself down the corridor. Dust fell from the ceiling with every distant attack. Her vision blurred, but her gaze remained fixed, on the door at the end of the hallway. The interrogation room. Dorobo Haruhi was still inside, still restrained. The cursed seal army hadn't gotten to him yet. But they would. Time was running out. And yet, despite everything, she knew what she had to do. By the time she reached the end of the hall, her limbs were trembling. She slumped against the wooden door, sweat slicking her temple, her breath sharp and uneven. With one last push of will, she shoved it open. The room was cloaked in shadow, lit only by a single flickering overhead light. Chains clinked softly. On the far wall, suspended in restraints, was Haruhi. His red hair hung in limp clumps, face bruised and smeared with blood. And yet, when his dull eyes lifted and met hers, they sparked, no, burned, with twisted delight. A grin curled across his cracked lips. Sakura's stomach turned. She let the door slam shut behind her, the sound echoing in the dark room. Still, she stood tall. He would not see her flinch. Beautiful, Haruhi rasped, the word drawn out like a prayer. Sakura-sama. Her hands curled into fists. What the hell did you do? She snapped, stalking toward him. Each step sent agony lancing up her legs, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. What did you do? His laughter bubbled out, breathy and ecstatic. When she reached him, she grabbed the collar of his tattered shirt, jerking him toward her with a strength she didn't have to spare. The chains clinked again, strained against the force. This was what he wanted. Her fury, her attention. Her eyes burned into his like he was the only thing that existed. No Uchiha heir here to steal her attention. No distractions. Just him and her and the storm of passionate fury she brought with her. Haruhi grinned wider, even as blood dribbled from the corner of his mouth. You came for me, he whispered. Sakura's glare sharpened. Don't flatter yourself. But her grip didn't loosen. And his grin only grew. I knew you would come, Haruhi murmured, voice low and giddy with triumph. You're so predictable, Sakura-sama. My love, my joy. Sasuke, Naruto, Sai, they all tried to break me. Torture, genjutsu, isolation. But I held out. For this. For you, my love. Because I knew you'd come for me in the end. Sakura's jaw tightened, a vein twitching at her temple. Disgust rolled through her like bile. She finally released him, fingers unclenching from his ragged shirt, and stepped back, putting as much space between them as possible. Her arms crossed tightly over her chest as she stared him down with blistering contempt. You got what you wanted, she said, her voice frosty. Talk. The walls gave a sudden groan. A low, eerie shudder shook dust loose from the ceiling. Haruhi lifted his gaze briefly to the debris drifting down, then smiled wider. Gladly, he said, glancing at the chains binding him. If only you would. Not a chance, Sakura snapped before he could finish. He sighed with exaggerated disappointment and gave a helpless shrug. It was worth a shot. His eyes raked over her with a slow, seductive hunger, and the gleam in them turned feral. You've been healing Hinata's eyes, haven't you? I wish I could have seen it. I slashed them for you, you know. A gift. Sakura's breath caught in her throat. Her fists clenched at her sides. A gift. You're so beautiful when you're working, Haruhi said dreamily, like he were describing an erotic painting. Focused. Fierce. A goddess bathed in blood and chakra. A divine being descended from the heavens just to walk among us mere mortals. Oh, how I wanted to see you save her with your own hands. But, he sighed wistfully, perhaps another time. A deep, muffled explosion rocked the ground beneath them, rattling the very air. The hideout was crumbling faster now. Sakura didn't flinch, she couldn't afford to. What did you want to tell me that you couldn't say to the others? Haruhi's grin returned, sly and slow. He tilted his head, chains rattling with the motion, and studied her like a predator who already knew he'd caught his prey. So convenient, he murmured, isn't it? How my army just happened to arrive after the Kyuubi and the Uchiha heir left the hideout. Don't you think? Sakura's stomach dropped. Her heartbeat quickened. Like it was planned, she asked, each word falling heavy with dawning horror. Haruhi chuckled, and the sound was like broken glass. Because it was planned, my love, he said, eyes gleaming. Oh, Sakura-sama, did you really think I was working alone? What is this? Kakashi asked, his voice sharper than usual as he glared down at the report Shikamaru had just placed on his desk. His eyes flicked from line to line with growing disbelief. Who authorized Naruto and Sasuke to pursue Team Oboro? Shikamaru shifted uncomfortably, scratching the back of his head. Apparently, Sai received a scroll carrying your chakra signature and your seal. Looked official enough. So Naruto and Sasuke went after Team Oboro this morning. And now, Kakashi said flatly, the rest of Team 7 and Team Taka have been ambushed by a cursed seal army, Sakura's out of chakra, and Hinata isn't even fully recovered. Shikamaru sighed and ran a hand through his hair. You want me to send reinforcements? Kakashi leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. By the time they get there, it'll be too late. I was going to dispatch the whole of Team 7 after Sakura finished healing Hinata's eyes. Not like this. Someone's forcing our hand. He glanced at the scroll again, eyes narrowing. Who has the means to forge the Hokage's seal and copy my chakra signature with this level of precision? Shikamaru crossed his arms, frowning as he stared at the scroll. Someone who's done it before. Kakashi's eye darkened. You don't think? A knock interrupted him. The door creaked open, and Morino Ibiki stepped inside, his expression grave. The moment Kakashi saw his face, his gut clenched. Great. Just what this day needed. More bad news. Oi, Naruto called out, pointing from atop Sasuke's Susanoo as it soared over the forest. There. Look. That's Sai, Karen, and Hinata. They must have made it out in time. Sasuke's eyes followed Naruto's outstretched hand. Below, 3 figures emerged from the trees, battered but alive. Without a word, Sasuke guided Susanoo downward, the ethereal armor dissolving into the wind as they touched down. We got your message, Naruto said to Sai. We came back as soon as we could. Is everyone okay? The moment his boots hit the ground, Sasuke swept a sharp gaze over Karen and Hinata, exhausted, but standing. Then his eyes landed on Sai. Where's Sakura? He asked, voice low and razor sharp. Sai hesitated. Just a flicker, but it was enough. She went to Haruhi, he admitted, gaze steady despite the guilt behind it. Naruto's arms had barely wrapped around Hinata when the words hit. His eyes widened. Wait. What? You told her? Sasuke snapped, his voice like thunder. In the blink of an eye, his hand was at Sai's throat, pinning him back against a tree. The Mangekyo Sharingan spun violently in his eyes, fury igniting around him. I didn't want to waste the opportunity, Sai choked, struggling to speak. Sasuke. Naruto shouted, rushing forward. Don't kill him. She's not alone, Hinata said quickly. Jugo and Suigetsu stayed behind. They promised they wouldn't let the cursed seal army get to her. Sasuke's Sharingan flickered with conflict. For a breathless moment, he stared into Sai's face as though debating whether it would be worth it. Then he released him. Sai crumpled to the ground, coughing and clutching his throat. She's a kunoichi of Konoha, Sai rasped. She's doing her duty. Sasuke's jaw clenched so hard it ached. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Because just then, Suigetsu limped out from the tree line, dragging Jugo's unconscious body behind him like a ragdoll. Suigetsu groaned. We are never doing that again. Sasuke was on him in an instant. Where is Sakura? We barely made it out, Suigetsu said, panting. That army hit us like a damn tidal wave. Jugo wouldn't stop. He kept trying to fight through, but he glanced down at his comrade. He couldn't hold out in the end. I had to pull him out before we both went down. A heavy silence fell. Then, with a pulse of chakra, Sasuke's Susanoo flared back to life, towering and menacing in its rebirth. Naruto groaned. Oi, Sasuke, what are you planning now? Sasuke gave him a smirk, cold and full of fire. What do you think, idiot? His eyes gleamed. Are you coming or not? Naruto sighed, but the grin tugging at his lips betrayed the adrenaline rising in his chest. He pressed a kiss to Hinata's temple. Let's go kick some ass. You're telling me that both Sumiki Kido and Magar have escaped from prison, Kakashi said slowly, each word laced with disbelief as he stared across his desk at Ibiki. Ibiki's scowl deepened, and he gave a grim nod. One of our own was compromised, under the influence of some kind of manipulation drug. He let them out. Shikamaru, standing off to the side, narrowed his eyes. Let me guess. His voice was dry, edged with irritation. Dorobo Haruhi. Ibiki raised an eyebrow. Right on target. The drug was traced back to a batch Haruhi smuggled into the prison, under the guise of medical prescriptions. Kakashi exhaled sharply and pinched the bridge of his nose. His thoughts raced. If Kido and Magar were free, it wouldn't take a genius to piece together the next move. He rubbed at his tired eyes. Sumiki Kido and Magar both have unfinished business with Sakura, he muttered. And with Haruhi's twisted obsession, he probably orchestrated this as a parting gift. This is a disaster, Shikamaru said under his breath, jaw tight. Have we deployed any trackers? Ibiki nodded. Some of my men were sent out the moment we confirmed the breach. But, he paused. There were no signs of escape. No broken seals. No witnesses. It's like they vanished. Which means they could still be in Konoha, Shikamaru murmured, brow furrowed in thought. Lying low, waiting for the chaos to die down. Kakashi's eyes narrowed. Can we put someone from the Inuzuka clan on it? Their noses might catch what our eyes can't. Already ahead of you, Shikamaru said, already halfway out the door. Sumiki Kido and Mager, Sakura spat out. I should have known. Using DNA to morph into something else entirely, disgusting. Yes, Kido's methods are certainly unconventional, Haruhi replied, tilting his head as though musing on a fond memory. His chakra-enhancing drugs were originally designed for war. Cruel, even by my standards. But you have to admit, his results are extraordinary. They're criminals, Sakura snapped. Locked away. In prison. Where they belong. Haruhi's grin widened, predatory and gleaming. It stretched across his face. Are they? He asked softly. By now, they should have slipped free. With a little help, from one of my influenced friends. Sakura's heart skipped a beat. Her fingers tightened around the kunai at her hip. If they did escape, she said coolly, masking her rising panic behind a gaze of steel, they'll be tracked down quickly. You underestimate how well we clean up our messes. Haruhi gave a breathy laugh. And you underestimate how long this plan has been in motion. They didn't run, Sakura-sama. They sent me a message, gift wrapped in the form of my beloved cursed seal army. A deep, echoing rumble reverberated through the walls. Sakura stiffened. She could hear it now, footsteps. Dozens. Hundreds. Maybe more. Heavy, fast, and closing in. Haruhi cocked his head toward the hallway just as the door behind Sakura exploded open. Cursed seal shinobi surged through in a wave of snarling, feral motion. Some had twisted, mutated limbs. Others moved like shadows, silent, efficient, monstrous. Their eyes burned with unnatural fire. Sakura spun around, placing herself between Haruhi and the door. Her body screamed in protest, every nerve frayed, every muscle drained. But she raised her kunai nonetheless, her stance defiant. Touch me, and I swear I'll take as many of you down as I can, she growled. Although she already knew the odds weren't in her favor. Haruhi's voice slithered out from behind her, oily and amused. Sakura-sama, he purred. Come now, you've already played the martyr. Let's not spoil the ending with something so anticlimactic. She didn't move. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Let's take this conversation, he continued, voice dripping with satisfaction, somewhere more private, shall we? And as the cursed seal army fanned out around her like wolves closing in for the kill, Sakura knew. She had to fight her way out. You're seriously pissing me off, Sakura snarled, her fists clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her glare could have set fire to the air between her and Haruhi. Haruhi's eyes gleamed with dark amusement, a twisted hunger simmering just beneath the surface. You're breathtaking when you're furious, Sakura-sama. Furious, she echoed coldly, her gaze flicking to the cursed seal-marked shinobi tightening their formation around her. No, Haruhi. Furious was 5 minutes ago. Right now, her voice dropped. Deadly. I'm ready to tear you apart. Come a little closer, if you dare. He grinned, slow and wicked. With a snap of his fingers, 2 of the cursed ninjas stepped forward and unshackled him. The chains hit the ground with a heavy clang, and Haruhi rubbed at the red welts circling his wrists, unbothered. He took a leisurely step toward her. Let's not make this more painful than it needs to be, he said, voice syrupy smooth. Be a good girl and come with me. I'd hate to bruise that pretty face of yours. Sakura chuckled darkly. Don't you know, Haruhi? We kunoichi thrive in pain. We endure it, we wield it, and we never go down easy. With a breath, She released the seal. The Byakugo mark bloomed at her forehead and snaked down her body in dark lines. Her vision swam from the effort, her reserves nearly drained after healing Hinata, but she stood tall, trembling only from the strain of holding herself together. Across the room, Haruhi's expression shifted. Awe flickered in his eyes as he whispered, "The Byakugo seal, beautiful. A masterpiece born from sacrifice and relentless effort. You never disappoint, Sakura-sama." "Spare me the flattery," she snapped. "Call off your cursed pets and face me yourself. Let's settle this with our fists, if you've got the spine for it." He gave a soft laugh and raised his hands in mock surrender. "Oh, Sakura-sama, you know I've always preferred seduction over violence." "Then you're going to hate what comes next," she hissed. "Because I'm done playing nice." At her words, 3 of the cursed seal shinobi lunged. Sakura moved like lightning. She ducked the first strike, sidestepped the second, then drove her fist into the third man's gut with such force his body flew backward, slamming into the far wall with a bone-cracking thud. The room froze for a breathless moment, then chaos erupted. The others swarmed her, kunai flashing. She dodged, pivoted, struck, each move precise and brutal. She ignored the sting of near misses, focused only on landing hit after hit. For every blow they threw, she delivered 3. Haruhi watched from a safe distance, arms crossed and jaw clenched, a vein ticking just beneath his skin. This wasn't going how he'd envisioned it. And Sakura, she was just getting started. "There are so many of them," Naruto groaned, watching as his shadow clones swarmed the cursed ninja army in waves. Explosions of chakra echoed through the halls of Orochimaru's old hideout, dust and debris shaking loose from the ceiling above. "These idiots never know when to quit." He flicked a glance at Sasuke, his expression serious beneath the weight of urgency. "I'll hold them off as long as I can. You've got to get to Sakura. She should be in the interrogation room with Haruhi." Sasuke clenched his jaw, his Sharingan flaring. "It'd be faster if we just killed them." "I know," Naruto said, his voice quieter now, steadier. "But some of them aren't doing this of their own will. We owe it to them to try." Sasuke scoffed and rolled his eyes, but the hesitation in his attacks betrayed a flicker of agreement. They didn't have time for Naruto's bleeding heart, but maybe that was exactly what made Naruto stronger. Still, this delay, it was Haruhi's intention, wasn't it? Keep them apart. Stall until it was too late to help Sakura. Naruto's clones let out a unified battle cry, forcing the cursed sealed shinobi back and slamming them into the corridor walls. In the chaos, a narrow path opened up, just wide enough. "Go to Sakura-chan," Naruto shouted, chakra crackling around him like a storm. Sasuke didn't need to be told twice. With a burst of speed, he darted down the corridor, eyes locked forward. "TCH," he muttered with a smirk. "Like you needed to tell me." "Shanaru," Sakura roared, driving her fist into the cursed seal ninja charging her. The ground cracked beneath the force of her punch, the enemy sent flying into a heap of shattered stone and dust. But her breathing was ragged. Her vision blurred at the edges. Damn it! Her chakra was slipping through her fingers like sand. Healing Hinata had drained her far more than she'd anticipated, more than she could afford. Every movement now felt heavier, slower, like her own body was dragging her down. She stumbled back a step, hands trembling as she readied another strike. Not yet. Just a little longer. But she knew. Any moment now, her strength would give out. Her consciousness would flicker, and Haruhi would be waiting. Watching. Ready to seize his moment and take her for himself. The very thought of his smug, predatory grin made her blood boil. No, I won't let him win. Sakura bit down hard on her lip to stay grounded. She wanted to fight. She wanted to push through the pain, shatter Haruhi's delusions with her fists, and wipe that knowing smirk off his face for good. But this wasn't pride anymore, this was survival. And she needed to live long enough to warn the others. To make it back to Sasuke. To end this properly. Another rogue ninja lunged at her from the side. She ducked, barely, then slammed her elbow into his gut. But there were too many. They were relentless, controlled, desperate. She had to retreat. Her fists clenched, torn between fury and the crushing weight of exhaustion. But Sakura knew when to choose the smarter fight. Get out. Live. Regroup. Her feet slid into a defensive stance, muscles coiled, eyes darting along the shadowed corridor in search of an opening. She could feel her chakra sputtering out, like a flame struggling to stay lit in a storm. And then, chirp. A sharp, electric cry split the air. Then another. And another. The sound of 1,000 birds screaming. Her breath hitched. Her eyes widened. Sasuke-kun, she whispered. And there he was. Blurring through the cursed seal army like a thunderbolt, his chidori blazing in his hand, raw, violent, and beautiful. Sparks of lightning danced across his fingers, illuminating his face in brief, searing flashes. His movements were precise, controlled. He struck hard but never fatally, weaving around the rogue shinobi with the barest margin of mercy. Even now, even after everything, he held back. He remembered. He chose not to kill. And he was coming for her. Sakura, he breathed as he reached her, voice low and rough with urgency. Her heart surged at the sound of it. She nearly collapsed in relief right there. But then. No, no, no. Haruhi's voice cracked. He surged forward, eyes wild with fury. He saw it. The way Sakura's shoulders relaxed when Sasuke arrived, the way their eyes locked with unspoken words and unshakable understanding. No confessions. No grand gestures. Just knowing. And it was unbearable. They didn't even have to speak to crush him. Haruhi's fists trembled at his sides, his chakra rippling erratically. His face contorted into something savage as he looked between them, Sasuke, calm and fierce, and Sakura, weakened but steadfast, and he saw everything he couldn't control slipping through his fingers. It wasn't just that Sasuke had reached her. It was that she had held out for him. And that drove Haruhi mad. Sakura-sama, Haruhi whispered, the words barely audible. His voice trembled, soft, broken, his heart splintering as he watched the scene before him unravel. The light in her eyes, the strength in her voice, none of it had ever been meant for him. She hadn't even looked at him. Are you all right? Sasuke asked, his tone calm, focused. He didn't spare Haruhi a single glance. To him, the rogue was already irrelevant. I am now, Sakura breathed, the edges of her mouth lifting in a tired smile. The Byakugo seal pulsed one last time before fading, the swirling mark across her body receding until only the single violet diamond remained at the center of her forehead. I couldn't have held out much longer. Sasuke stepped closer, the flickering remnants of Chidori vanishing from his hand as he reached for her. Sorry, I'm late. We came as soon as we found out what was happening. There's more, Sakura said quickly, swaying slightly. Her chakra reserves were almost gone, and she wasn't sure how long she had before her body gave in. Haruhi's not acting alone. Sumiki Kido and Magar, they're part of it, too. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Who? Never mind, she murmured, her focus slipping, her vision dimming at the edges. Just tell Naruto and Sai. They'll know what to tell Kaka-sensei. She pitched forward, and Sasuke caught her before she could fall, his arm securing her against his chest. His gaze dropped to her face, fierce concern flashing in his eyes. Sakura. Her voice came out in a whisper, barely a breath against his collar. He's getting away. Sasuke looked up sharply. The hallway was empty. Haruhi was gone, but in his place, the cursed seal shinobi remained, blocking the corridors, snarling, ready to buy their master more time. Sasuke's Sharingan glinted, and his jaw tightened with frustration. Damn it. He got away? Naruto asked, his brow furrowed as he fell into step beside Sasuke, who carried an unconscious Sakura. They moved together through the shadowed halls of Orochimaru's hideout. Sasuke gave a short nod, his gaze darkening as he looked down at her. She pushed herself too hard. Naruto's voice lowered with regret. Sakura-chan could have taken him down if she hadn't burned through her chakra healing Hinata. And if we hadn't been off tracking down Team Oboro. Don't blame yourself, Sasuke said sharply, glaring at him. Haruhi was clearly counting on splitting us up. He glanced back at Sakura. You recognize those names? Naruto frowned, thinking. Sumiki Kido and Magar. Sounds familiar. I might have skimmed over their names in a report. Sakura said Sai might know more, Sasuke said. I do. Sai stepped forward from the shadows, arms crossed, and his expression unreadable. And if they're involved, things are worse than we thought. Who are they? Sasuke asked flatly. A mad scientist and his attack dog, Sai replied, then looked at Sakura. Is she okay? She'll recover, Sasuke answered. Sai exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Kido was once a Konoha shinobi. While you were away on your atonement journey, he started staging minor security threats targeting high-profile figures, like the Fire Daimyo, to manipulate funding away from Sakura's children's mental health care clinic and back into Anbu initiatives. Naruto's eyes widened. Oh yeah, I remember now. He wanted her funding for his own experiments. You should remember, Sai said. You were there. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Naruto laughed awkwardly and scratched the back of his head. Anyway, Sai said slowly. Kakashi had me investigate, but Kido caught wind of it and sent assassins after me. They failed. So he moved forward with Magar, faster than planned. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. What were they planning? Kido was trying to manufacture Sharingan and tailed beast cloaks using drugs and harvested genetic material, Sai explained. But he needed you back in Konoha. So he used Sakura to bait you. Sasuke clenched his jaw as his own memory of that time resurfaced. He remembered now. When he heard that Sakura had been kidnapped, he rushed back to Konoha without a second thought. But as soon as he realized that she had handled Kido after reading the subordinates' memories, he took care of them quickly and resumed his atonement journey. He hadn't given it any thought after that. But maybe he should have. That bastard's still alive? Sasuke asked darkly. He was locked away in prison, Sai said. We figured with security and everything, but they must have slipped through our fingers. Naruto's eyes narrowed in realization. So Kido, Magar, and Haruhi are all working together. Sai nodded. Along with Team Oboro. And probably others. It's starting to look like a coordinated effort. Damn it, Sasuke muttered. If they're all in this together, they must have broken out of prison, Sai continued. And if we know, the Hokage must know by now, too. The trio fell silent. Sai's eyes dropped to Sakura, then to the hallway ahead. We need to get Sakura and Hinata somewhere more secure, he said. Orochimaru's old hideout is a bust. Where? Naruto asked. Iwagakure, Sai answered. Everything that has occurred here technically falls under the Tsuchikage's territory. We need to report directly what's going on. Naruto gave a tired grin. Good. My shadow clones caught a lot of the rogue ninja army. I need somewhere to drop them off. Sai raised a brow. Exactly. Sakura stirred groggily, consciousness returning in slow, uneven waves. Her limbs felt heavy, her body still sore. As her eyes fluttered open, the first thing she noticed was the unfamiliar ceiling, white, elegant, and intricately patterned. This wasn't her bed. It wasn't even the narrow cot she had shared with Sasuke during their time in Orochimaru's old hideout. The sheets beneath her were white silk, cool and luxurious against her skin. A soft breeze drifted through a crack in the massive glass windows that framed the room, bringing with it the crisp scent of mountain air. Beyond the panes, a breathtaking view stretched out, snow-capped peaks bathed in morning light, their shadows long and blue across the valley. And then there was Sasuke, sitting quietly at her bedside, peeling apples with smooth precision. The glint of the paring knife caught her eye as he paused, glancing at her with his usual unreadable expression. Where are we? She asked, pushing herself upright and glancing around the room. Her voice came out hoarse, her throat dry. The Tsuchikage's residence, Sasuke replied softly, returning to the apple with a slow movement. You were only out for a couple of hours. Sakura let out a slow breath and turned her gaze back to the window, watching sunlight spill across the polished floor. It all felt so surreal. Haruhi? She asked quietly. He got away, Sasuke said, the words clipped and sharp. His jaw tensed, but he didn't stop peeling. Sakura's fists clenched in her lap. Her hands, scabbed, bruised, still stained faintly with blood, tightened until her knuckles turned white. Damn it. There's more, Sasuke said, his tone low. Kakashi sent word while you were asleep. Kido and Magar escaped Konoha. Her head snapped toward him. Haruhi mentioned it, but I thought they had Anbu on them. They did, Sasuke interrupted, calm but firm. His eyes flicked to hers, dark and steady. Everyone worked to track them down, but they slipped through. They're gone. Sakura swallowed hard, stunned. The sense of failure pressed down on her. Still, seeing the tension in Sasuke's shoulders, she didn't argue further. Not now. New orders just came in, he continued. We're to hunt them down, Kido, Magar, Haruhi. And Team Oboro, too. They're all our targets now. Her jaw tightened. But, Hinata's eyes. Once her injuries are healed, Sasuke said, finally setting the knife and apple aside. Kakashi's approved a 5-man team. Sakura blinked. 5. You, me, Naruto, Hinata, and Sai. She nodded slowly. And Team Taka? She asked after a beat. What happens to them? They're free to leave, Sasuke said, his tone unreadable again. Jugo and Suigetsu are being treated in the medical wing. They'll probably head out by morning. Sakura sighed and let her eyes fall closed, her head tipping back against the headboard with a dull thud. The weight of regret pressed heavily on her chest. I'm sorry, she murmured. Sasuke's voice came quietly. For what? I should have ended it when I had the chance, she said bitterly. I should have beaten Haruhi into the ground. Instead, he slipped through my fingers. We still captured most of the cursed seal shinobi that attacked Orochimaru's hideout, Sasuke said evenly. It wasn't a total loss. The sound of the blade slicing through apple skin stopped, replaced by the soft rustle of movement. A moment later, something cool pressed against her lips. Sakura cracked one eye open. Sasuke sat beside her now, holding out an apple slice, neatly carved with delicate bunny ears at the top. His expression was unreadable, but there was a quiet softness in the gesture. Without a word, Sakura parted her lips. He slid the apple into her mouth, his fingers brushing briefly against her lower lip as she bit down. She chewed slowly, savoring the sweetness of the fruit. You'll help lead the interrogation? She asked once she swallowed. Sasuke nodded once. Yeah, I'll search their memories, see what they know, if anything. It might give us a lead on where Haruhi's hiding. Good, Sakura said softly. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment longer. We'll find him, together. Sasuke didn't respond right away. He picked up another slice of apple, his gaze lingering on the delicate bunny ears he'd carved, small, precise, and completely unnecessary. And yet, he'd taken the time. Just like she had when they were younger. Yeah, he said at last, his voice low and steady. We will. He held the slice in front of her lips. Sakura leaned forward without hesitation, and he gently placed it in her mouth. Don't do that again. She hummed, chewing slowly, her eyes flicking up to meet him. Don't go off alone when your chakra's depleted, he said softly. I know you're strong. You always have been. But we're more than just teammates now, Sakura. His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. I cannot lose you again. Sakura studied him, her voice quiet. Okay. Sasuke nodded once, as if sealing a promise between them, and picked up another apple slice. He held it up, the carved bunny ears a bit uneven this time. Okay. He echoed, pressing it gently to her lips. This time, she smiled before taking the bite. Sasuke. Karen whined, throwing her arms open dramatically as she stepped toward him. I'm going to miss you so much. Sasuke grimaced and instinctively took a step back. Undeterred, Karen pivoted and latched onto Sakura instead, wrapping her arms tightly around her. Sakura, she wailed, burying her face into the pink-haired Kunoichi's shoulder. I'm really going to miss you. Then, she shot a look at Sasuke. Don't let him push you around too much. As if that could happen, Naruto snorted, crossing his arms with a wide grin. Sakura-chan would probably clobber him if he even tried. Sakura's brow twitched. She rolled her eyes but didn't bother to deny it. After a whole night of rest at the Tsuchikage's residence, her body felt renewed, her chakra replenished. The bit of rest had given her just enough time to mentally prepare for the delicate task ahead, healing Hinata's eyes. She had debated sleeping in the next morning, but Sasuke had told her that Team Taka was heading out early. So she, Sasuke, and Naruto had walked with them to the edge of the village to see them off. Sai had stayed behind. He was elbow-deep in paperwork with the Tsuchikage, negotiating cooperative terms for the interrogation of the Cursed Seal Army and getting formal approval for their mission in Iwagakure. I'll miss you too, Karen, Sakura said with a smile, patting her on the back. Take care of yourself, yeah. Don't be a stranger. I'm headed back to another one of Orochimaru's old hideouts, Karen replied. If you ever need me, well, you know where to find me. Sakura nodded. I'm sure we'll be visiting you soon. Not too soon, I hope, Suigetsu muttered, arms crossed and lips pulled into a frown. That whole mission was one big headache. Naruto rubbed the back of his head with a sheepish grin. We'll try to meet again under, less life-threatening circumstances. Suigetsu's expression softened into a dry smile. Let's try. Sasuke's gaze drifted toward Jugo, who had been quiet throughout the exchange. His eyes were fixed on Sakura, a gentle look in them that didn't go unnoticed. Keep in touch, Sasuke said quietly, directing the words to Jugo. Jugo turned to him and gave a small, peaceful smile. Yeah, I will. Just then, Suigetsu let out an exaggerated sigh and reached over, attempting to pry Karen off of Sakura. Oi, let her go already. No, Karen snapped, clinging tighter to Sakura. It's a girl's friendship. You wouldn't understand. Sakura laughed, shaking her head. Before she could pull away, Sasuke stepped in without a word. He placed a firm hand on Sakura's shoulder and tugged her gently but decisively back toward him. Off balance, Sakura stumbled slightly and leaned into him. Her eyes widened, caught off guard by the sudden possessiveness. He didn't flinch. His eyes landed on Karen, who raised an amused brow. Be on your way, Sasuke said flatly. Naruto watched the scene unfold, his grin slowly stretching into a chuckle. He nudged Sakura with his elbow. Whoa, is Sasuke jealous? Sakura gave Naruto a warning glare, cheeks warming, but it was too late. Naruto was already chuckling under his breath. Sakura, beet red, turned to walk away, Sasuke falling into step beside her. Karen smirked in knowing. Suigetsu groaned. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Jugo just shook his head, quietly amused. All right, Suigetsu said, leading Karen and Suigetsu out of Iwagakure. Let's go. He didn't check to see if Karen and Jugo were following, he knew they were. Still, he glanced over his shoulder. Karen lingered for a moment, casting one last look back toward Team 7. More specifically, toward Sasuke. Her gaze softened, touched with something like sadness, or maybe acceptance. Once they were out of earshot and well beyond the village gates, Suigetsu slowed his pace. He nudged her lightly with his elbow. You okay? He asked. Karen scoffed, wrinkling her nose as if the question physically pained her. Ew. What? Do you actually care about me now? Suigetsu's eye twitched. Don't be gross. It was just a question. She chuckled, the sound light but tinged with something heavier. I'm fine, she said, brushing her hair over her shoulder. Really? I just. I'm glad it's her. There was a quiet pause, broken only by the soft flap of wings. A bird settled gracefully on Jugo's shoulder, and he raised a hand to gently steady it. Me too, Jugo murmured. You really don't need to stand out here the whole time, Sakura said as she gently led Hinata into the medic room assigned to her. Her tone was calm, but there was a trace of exasperation as she glanced over her shoulder. We're safe in Iwagakure. Haruhi, Magar, and Kido won't be able to touch us here. Outside the room, Sasuke leaned silently against the wall. His gaze didn't waver. Naruto, however, jabbed an accusatory finger toward her, his blue eyes blazing with determination. Nope. Not happening. We are not budging from this spot. We're standing guard the entire time. Sakura frowned. It's going to take a couple of hours. We'll be here, Sasuke said, his voice like steel. All damn day if we have to, Naruto added, puffing out his chest. This time, we're not leaving the door. Not for anything. Orders be damned. Sakura let out a long sigh and rubbed her temples. No one is going to order you away from the door, she muttered. You're being ridiculous. Hinata let out a soft giggle beside her, still holding gently onto Sakura's arm for guidance. Despite still being unable to see, her smile was warm. Just a few more days, Sakura said, softening her tone as she turned to Hinata. And you'll have your eyesight back. I promise. Naruto beamed. And we'll be right here the whole time. No exceptions. Sakura tilted her head back and stared up at the ceiling before letting out a long, slow sigh. Fine. Then get comfortable. You're both going to be standing there for a while. She glanced back down at Hinata, her expression shifting to something more focused, more tender. Come on, she said gently. Let's heal your eyes. With Hinata's fingers still curled lightly around her arm, Sakura guided her toward the padded treatment bed. Behind them, the door closed with a soft click, but the presence of two loyal teammates on the other side was unmistakable, an unspoken vow that no one would disturb them. Not this time. Sasuke didn't like it. Not one bit. As Sakura slowly opened the hospital room door, Sasuke realized how exhausted Sakura was after treating Hinata. She forced a reassuring smile onto her face that left a dull ache in his chest. Her voice was soft but steady as she spoke to Naruto, who stood anxiously just outside. She's okay, she said gently. Hinata's stable. She'll wake up soon. Naruto let out an exhale and pulled her into a tight hug. Thank you, Sakura-chan. Her hands trembled as she returned the hug, the last reserves of chakra and willpower barely keeping her upright. Go be with her. She'll want you nearby when she wakes up. She should be able to see you, just a bit. Maybe as an orange and yellow blur, but she'd love that. Naruto grinned, tears welling in his eyes. He let go, but as his arms left her, so did all of her strength. The second he stepped back, Sakura swayed forward. Naruto moved to catch her, but he was too slow. Sasuke was there in an instant. He caught her around the waist, steadying her against him. His glare was sharp, directed at Naruto over the top of her head. Idiot, he muttered. Naruto winced. Sorry, Sakura-chan. I'm okay, she said quickly, her smile weak. Just a little rest and I'll be fine. We're going back to our room, Sasuke said, voice low and firm. He adjusted his grip to support more of her weight. Can you stand on your own? I should be okay, she murmured, drawing in a breath and slowly straightening. I think I can manage. Sasuke didn't look convinced. He watched her carefully as she took a few unsteady steps down the hallway, using the wall for support. When he looked back at Naruto, he found the same worry reflected in his old friend's eyes. With a quiet sigh, Sasuke said, Go check on your girl, done. I'll take care of mine. Naruto nodded, casting one more glance at Sakura before slipping into Hinata's room. As they turned the corner, Sasuke walked close beside her, his eyes never leaving her pale face. You really need to learn when to stop pushing yourself, he said, his voice softer now. I know you want to heal Hinata, but. Her eyes are almost healed, Sakura interrupted. A couple more treatments and it'll all be over. Sakura. She shook her head, eyes blazing with stubborn resolve. I have to do this. For Hinata. For Naruto. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. It's not your fault, you know. Her breath caught. She looked down, her hand clenched into a trembling fist at her side, cheeks flushed with guilt. Haruhi, he captured Hinata because of me. I need to do this. I have to. Atonement, huh? Sasuke said quietly. Memories of his own atonement journey flashed in his mind. You have nothing to atone for, Sakura. She didn't respond, only kept walking, her silence louder than words. Sasuke exhaled heavily and stepped closer. Sakura, he said more firmly, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. You have nothing to atone for. Haruhi is the one who did this. Not you. I know, she whispered at last, glancing up at him. Her eyes shimmered, wet with emotion, lashes trembling as she fought to keep the tears at bay. The pain there made Sasuke's chest hurt. It's just. Sasuke tilted his head slightly, waiting. You and Naruto, she began, her voice soft as the pain cracked through her composure. You both fought so hard. Gave so much to protect everyone. To protect me. And because of that, because of me. Sakura. Because of me, she repeated, more firmly this time, her chin lifting with painful honesty as she pulled away from Sasuke. Haruhi slashed Hinata's eyes. He didn't just want to hurt her, he wanted to hurt me. To force me to heal her. To make me remember him every time I lay my hands on her. To make healing, something beautiful, something sacred, feel corrupted. Twisted. Her voice cracked, and she took a shuddering breath, trying to steady herself as she stood on her shaky feet alone. Sasuke swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. She was beautiful. Her strength, her raw emotion, her courage to keep moving forward. It's why he fell in love with her all those years ago. Why, when he left the village, he knew he would never stop loving her. So now, every time I heal her, Sakura said, quieter now, but unwavering, I focus on you. On Naruto. On the people I care about. I force myself to remember why I became a medic in the first place. Because I won't let him take that away from me. I won't give him the satisfaction. Not now. Not ever. For a long moment, Sasuke was silent, but his expression softened. Without a word, he reached out and gripped her waist, grounding her with his touch. Once Hinata's healed, we'll go after him, he said, his voice low and fierce. We'll get them all, and they'll pay. For Hinata. For what he did to you. Sakura gave a slight nod, her fierce resolve flickering under the weight of fatigue. Her chakra reserves were dangerously low, she'd poured everything into Hinata's recovery. Her body was screaming for rest. Hold on to me, Sasuke murmured. Tighter. I don't want you collapsing in the hallway. Obediently, Sakura leaned into him, her limbs heavy, her breath shaky. Thank you, dear. Ah. Sasuke didn't leave her side for a moment, not as they walked the quiet corridors, not even when she paused to catch her breath near the stairs. When they finally reached their room, he guided her gently to the cushioned seat beside the wide windows that overlooked Iwagakure's misty skyline. Only once she was sitting, leaning back, eyes half-lidded, did Sasuke step away. He watched her for a beat longer, making sure she was stable. Then he turned to leave. Sasuke-kun. Her voice was barely above a whisper, laced with exhaustion. I'm getting you food, he said without turning, already anticipating the question she didn't have the strength to say out loud. Sakura gave a faint nod, her lashes fluttering as her head tilted against the back of the chair. Okay. The room was quiet. The sun slanted through the glass, golden and warm against her face. Sakura was asleep before the door clicked softly shut behind Sasuke. How are your wife's eyes? Onoki asked as Naruto and Sai walked into his office. The Tsuchikage sat heavily behind his broad stone desk, the mountain of paperwork before him stacked so high it rivaled the infamously towering piles in Kakashi's office back in Konoha. Scrolls, mission reports, and diplomatic requests teetered precariously. Behind him stood his granddaughter, Kuretsuchi, arms crossed and eyes narrowed in quiet scrutiny. Her gaze shifted back and forth between Naruto and Sai, assessing them with the wariness of a seasoned shinobi before settling momentarily on her grandfather. Naruto smiled. Sakura-chan is almost done healing them. One more session and she'll be able to see again. Onoki nodded and glanced at Kuretsuchi. Take note of that, Kunoichi. We might want to negotiate with Konoha to borrow her for a few months. Naruto frowned. A certain Uchiha heir was not going to take that well. No, he wouldn't like it at all. I'm sure if you put in a formal request with the Hokage, he might be willing to oblige, Sai said lightly. Onoki let out a rough laugh. Willing to oblige only if I let you run rampant throughout Tsuchi no Kuni. Sai smiled, and Naruto frowned. We wouldn't run rampant. Ji-chan, Kuretsuchi quietly said. Onoki waved her off before slamming his hand on his desk. If you want to go traipsing through Tsuchi no Kuni, then you're going to need to let us use Haruno Sakura for a few months. Our hospital systems could use someone like her. Someone accomplished and hardworking. She trained under Tsunade and has set up multiple children's therapy centers over the years. I'd like her to train a few medic nuns and share her knowledge with Iwagakure while you search for those mad scientists. Naruto's brow furrowed, and he glanced at Sai. Sai gave Naruto a slight nod. As much as Naruto hated using Sakura as a bargaining chip, he knew the only way they'd get help with hunting down Haruhi, Kido, Magar, and Team Oboro is if they were willing to negotiate. All right to the Hokage, Naruto said quietly. Splendid, Onoki said cheerfully. Now, tell me how the interrogations are going with those rogue ninja. Uchiha Sasuke has been instrumental in getting them to open up, Sai said. That Sharingan of his, Onoki mused, stroking his white beard, it's quite useful. Very, Sai said. We have reason to believe that Kido, Magar, Haruhi, and the rest of Team Oboro are meeting in Tsuchi no Kuni to work on their experiments. Onoki frowned and grumbled, those rats couldn't have picked a better place to hide. Our land is hard to maneuver through, and there are plenty of places to hide. He glanced at Kuretsuchi. I want you on this. As soon as there's information, you go with the Konoha ninja to hunt them down. Yes, Kuretsuchi said with a nod of her head. I'll put together a small team that can accompany us. She glanced at Sai and Naruto. Can you give me a rundown of your encounters with the rogue ninja? I'd like to know their strengths and weaknesses so I can help fill in the gaps. Sai raised an eyebrow. Of course. Onoki grinned widely and nodded. Excellent. Naruto and Sai exited the Tsuchikage's office in silence, their footsteps echoing softly down the stone corridor. It wasn't until they had rounded a corner and left the guards behind that Sai finally spoke. The Hokage will agree to the terms, he said in a low voice. Improving relations between Iwagakure and Konohagakure is too important to pass up. Naruto gave a short nod but didn't look convinced. His brows were furrowed, his expression tight with worry. Yeah, I know, he muttered. But Sakura's been pushing herself non-stop, healing Hinata. And after what happened with Haruhi, she needs rest. Real rest. Sai glanced at him. You know she won't take it. She's never been one to stand still. Not in Konoha. Not on missions. You, Sasuke, Sakura, Team 7 doesn't have an off switch. She's just like you and Sasuke. Naruto gave a bitter laugh, raking a hand through his messy blonde hair. Guess that's true. Still, I can't shake this feeling. She's been through too much lately. Sai gave a small nod of agreement. Which is why I think it would be wise for her to stay here. In Iwagakure. For now. Naruto's eyes narrowed. You think they'll come after her again? Sai's voice dropped. They will. They all hold a personal grudge against her. And Haruhi's fixation on her. It's dangerous. Deep-rooted. Naruto's fists clenched at his sides. I don't like the idea of leaving her here alone. Not unguarded. Not while we chase down those bastards. We won't leave her without support, Sai said calmly. But the Hokage needs a full picture. Write to him. Tell him everything. Let him decide how we move forward. Naruto exhaled through his nose and nodded slowly. Yeah, alright. But Sasuke isn't going to take this well. Sai shrugged slightly. He'll get over it. Sakura can handle herself. Naruto scratched his cheek, glancing out one of the narrow windows lining the hallway. Yeah, but still, who's going to break the news to them? Sai's lips twitched into something that might have been a smirk, or a grimace. I nominate you. Naruto groaned. Of course you do. Wait until she's finished healing Hinata's eyes, Sai added. We don't need her distracted, and we don't know our official orders yet. Naruto gave a reluctant nod. Yeah, after she's done. Then we'll tell her and Sasuke. A beat of silence. Tell us what? The voice was quiet, cold. Both men froze. Sai turned first, his eyes widening slightly as he spotted Sasuke leaning against the stone wall behind them, his gaze sharp. Naruto winced and shot a sidelong glance at Sai, who looked genuinely surprised. You knew he was there, didn't you? Sai hissed under his breath. Naruto gave a sheepish grin. Oh oi, maybe. Sasuke stepped forward, his tone razor-edged. Tell us what? Sai sighed and met Sasuke's gaze evenly. We might need Sakura to remain in Iwagakure for a few months. While we track down Haruhi, Kido, Mager, and Team Oboro. Sasuke's eyes narrowed dangerously. You're deciding this without telling her? No, Naruto said quickly. We were going to. The Tsuchikage wants her to help out with their medical department. We just wanted to wait to tell her until after Hinata's healed. Because you didn't want her distracted, Sasuke said flatly. Sai nodded. And because we haven't received the Hokage's confirmation yet. We're about to write to him. Sasuke's expression was unreadable for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, she's not going to like it. No, Naruto agreed. But we want her safe. And leaving her in Iwagakure might be the best choice for her. Sasuke's jaw tightened. She'd be better off in Konoha. There, at least, she'd be surrounded by friends and family. By comrades who would fight and die for her. But in Iwagakure, who did she have? A team that was about to head off to hunt down rogue ninja without her. And then who would be there to watch out for her? It's not optimal, Sai said quietly. But what choice do we have? Sasuke sighed. It wasn't much of a choice at all. This was just the beginning, the real secret will unfold in the next episode. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And hit the bell icon so you'll be the first to see what happens next. See you again in the next journey of Uzumaki Empire 2.0.